and coffee, which I'm enjoying right now. And then you've got Valley Brew, which has been around a while, but you have the beautiful new Take 5 music dining room next to it. And they do have an association with the University of Pacific and its many schools of music and its jazz department. You've got Werlo's practically across the street from us here, and they have live music 6-7 days a week there. Very eclectic, but a lot of swing and ragtime and blues, rhythm and blues. The Mile Wine Company, also live music about, I think, 5 or 6 nights a week, also within about a block from here. And the Mile Wine Company very aggressive about having a lot of local bar called The Mile, which is very close to here. And that's next to Gusty's Wings. And then across the street from all this, and this is up near Alder Street, is the Whiskey Barrel, which is being reborn again after some tragic difficulties with the building, which is very old. But the Whiskey Barrel as a whole has done very well. Then you've got 2 trendy new beer-type places, the Taps Barrel House here on the Miracle Mile, and I mentioned briefly Taps Bar and Grill downtown Stockton, which is in the Cineplex complex. And then also here on the Miracle Mile, you've got Coco Row, Japanese food. Downtown, I just went blank. Maybe Dustin can help me out with the name of the downtown Japanese restaurant.
Oh, I know what you're talking about.
It's a Cineplex complex.
Yeah, it's right by the movie theater.
And there's a new Subway sandwich shop there. And of course, there's Starbucks there.
Mm-hmm.
But then you've got, it'll pop into our heads.
Yeah.
You've got the Midtown Creperie here on the Miracle Mile. You've got the Korean Barbecue, which has a really mean, great karaoke bar in the rear most evenings.
Misaki's?
Misaki's, that's it. Thank you.
No problem.
Dustin's my go-to guy. Last week he got Bob Thomas's lifetime coaching record for me when I couldn't come up with that. So those are all, and again, it's not so much that these places are simply here. These are all relatively new. If you go back 10 years ago, almost everything I just rattled off for the last, 10 minutes or so wasn't here. Yes, there were some other places that were here that unfortunately didn't survive, but these are all new. This is what we have now. Stockton is great now. Yes, we have a long ways to go to make downtown look super vibrant and exciting. We need a lot more pedestrians on the streets. One thing the Miracle Mile has to be given credit for, it has developed pedestrians. People park centrally and or walk to it from their homes or take our Route 40 Metro Express RTD bus like I did. Whenever you see me here, I come by walking or by bus. I usually come by bus and then walk home, actually, because I live on Acacia Street, which is 19 minutes from here by walking. It's only to get here by bus from downtown.
That is our dear friend Nate Knott. This is Richard Slezak with Troy McCartney. It's the Saturday Evening News at 7:54 p.m. here in Stockton. And yeah, we got that stopped. And we're coming to you over the voiceofstockton.org. And we here in the John Moriarty studio have the YouTube and Facebook running, but it doesn't seem to be running too good. It's just a set screenshot, and we're not in it. So, good evening, Troy.
Good evening, Richard. How are you doing?
Oh, I'm doing fine. These microphones, oh man, they're picking it up good. The audio does seem to be working quite well here in the studio. And with that, speaking of audio, that means audition. So we're going to get that rocking and rolling here. 7:55 looks like a good time to get started with it. This creates the recorded portion of our radio show for play at later dates. And today is the 30th day of September, 2017. Half of most of Puerto Rico looks to be laying in ruins. or at least a sizable portion. Schools are back in session, about half of them. What have you heard, Troy? About 30% of the country's got phone service, and some city buses started running today. But there have been deaths down in Puerto Rico, American territory, since 1898. Because the boiler blew on the main in Havana Harbor. We had to blame somebody.
We need to show some love for our fellow Americans that are living, born and raised in Puerto Rico, many of whom live in even Stockton, all over the state, all over the country. These people are loyal Americans. They've served in the military, and they've served well. So we should not treat them as if they're some foreign country out in the middle of a big water somewhere that's unmentionable.
Yeah, big water, Atlantic,
citizens.
Caribbean. This is the Saturday Evening News with your host Richard Slezak and Troy McCartney, coming to you over the voiceofstockton.org, soon to be KXVS 92.1 FM for Stockton, and attempting a broadcast, webcast over the internet via YouTube and Facebook, but we're kind of rattling the cage on that one. A little bit of shortcomings of the electronic operator more so than the equipment. Be that as it may. And so, Troy, what else? We got things. Puerto Rico being on the short end, and Mr. Trump not caring very much.
Well, Richard, it's funny you should mention that name. He had some recent press where he claims the heritage of the United States with the Robert E. Lee statues and things. Well, I never really thought about the town that I was born and raised in until this issue came up. I was born in a town in Louisiana called Leesville. My hometown was a town named after Robert E. Lee, Leesville, Louisiana. I actually went to high school at Leesville High School. And this is a bit of my heritage. And I remember Donald Trump saying that our heritage, but I seem to remember that his grandfather came from Estonia after the Civil War. And his grandmother, they were not Americans at the time that the Civil War happened. And not only that, but his mother was from Germany. So his children are from Eastern European descent through their parents, and German and Estonian descent through him. So he actually has no claim to his heritage when he speaks about the racist statues that are scattered about the South. I actually have more connection to those statues because I was born and raised in the town named after General Robert E. Lee and went to a high school named after General Robert E. Lee. That's a part of my heritage, and that part of my heritage is not good.
It is 8 p.m. You are web tuned to thevoiceofstockton.org, soon to be 92.1 KXVS FM for Stockton, California Community Radio. This is the Saturday Evening News. Troy McCartney reporting on conditions in America, starting with Mr. Trump and some heritage.
Yes, Richard, we're all Americans. It doesn't matter about the color of your skin, your accent, or any of that. The truth is that America has been called the melting pot because it is the place where people come from different parts of the world and all become citizens of this great country of ours. I was raised by a wonderful mother that taught me what patriotism is. For those people that think that they can make a claim to patriotism, hate me, because when I take away their rights, then it jeopardizes my rights. And that's what a patriot is. You don't have to like them. You don't have to love them. But you have to support their rights as an American. And that's what makes a patriot. Not someone that only agrees with those that walk like, talk like, and look like they do. There's a part in the Bible on the night that Jesus was born, where the angel of God went and visited the shepherds on the hillside. And he said to them, "Peace and goodwill among men, for today a Savior is born." Now, I know that there are some interpretations of that says that peace among men of goodwill. Well, you have to understand what peace among men of goodwill is. If you get a room full of Nazis together, those men among themselves are of goodwill. Unfortunately, their goodwill only extends to themselves, not to others. If you get a group of Ku Klux Klan together in a room, then those people have goodwill towards one another. But what the Bible actually says is peace and goodwill among men. That means all. And so in America, a part of our Constitution is the freedom of religion. And in that freedom of religion, we've opened our arms to people of different religions all over the country, wherever they come from. Once they are an American, then we're all a part of the melting pot. I wish that my fellow Americans could recognize that. Richard?
Well, we're work in progress, but we can elect leadership that certainly puts the brakes on progress towards more harmony between people. Well, the brakes on that were put on by close to 30 million white men and 27 million white women and millions some Latinos and about 750,000 black men, and they voted for Donald Trump,
who has no heritage that links him in any way to the Civil War. And just last week on television, on a show that Oprah Winfrey was hosting with a panel of 12 people, 12 Republicans and 12 Democrats. Well, I don't know their party affiliation. I'm sorry, that's 6 people that voted for Donald Trump and 6 people that voted for Hillary Clinton. And I noticed that a couple of the people that voted for Donald Trump said that we're headed towards a civil war in America. And that really shocked me to hear Americans today saying that we're headed towards a civil war, because if we are, it would be by their making, not by the making of anyone else. And so I wondered, who out there is teaching these people to prepare themselves for a civil war?
That'd be ugly.
That would be ugly, wouldn't it?
I mean, that's fights at the checkout stand.
Wow. Can you imagine? Yeah. And so it had me wondering, who's planning to kill me when that civil war break out? Because I have no plans upon anyone.
Yeah.
I worked for a guy just a couple of years ago. I was there for 8 years, and I got treated awfully when Obama was elected president. One day this man said to me, "Troy, are black guys collecting guns?" And I knew where he was going with this, so I ignored the question and I answered him by saying, "Look, Gary, Black people are not preparing for a war, a race war. That's something that white men are preparing for. And I don't even own a gun. And I'm only saying this because when someone teaches you hate, you have to look at what their ulterior motives are. Black people are not preparing for a race war. That's the furthest thing on their mind. That's why when Dylan Roof went into Mother Emanuel AME Church and killed 9 people, he left one alive to tell the world that he was trying to start a race war. But the part that most Americans overlooked is that the forgiveness, the Christian forgiveness in the hearts of black people caused them, the relatives of those people, to forgive him. They didn't want his blood. They didn't want his execution. They chose to forgive him for the hatred that he had displayed against them. That's the love and kindness that comes from the heart of Christians of the black race. He chose that church because AME stands for African Methodist Episcopal. And he chose that church because he felt that that was a perfect target, I guess.
And a very, I'm lifelong Christian. I'm Episcopal. My mom was Episcopal. I went to it as a child, got confirmed, was an altar boy. Yes, the Christian Brothers wine is excellent, and the wafer is a representation of the first century bread at the communion, at the first communion. And you know, a Methodist. I've been at a Methodist church now since about 1990. It's Christianity, folks.
Right.
And for Dylan Roof to do that makes Dylan Roof an antichrist, small scale, but an antichrist.
Exactly.
And you know, he's in line with the Stars and Bars flag wavers. Oh my.
You know, that's really funny. I hear you mention your first communion. When Donald Trump said that he ate the little cracker and he drank the wine and he doesn't even drink alcohol, I was really appalled that more Christians didn't take that as a form of sacrilege, because Christ said, as often as you do this, this is my body, this is my blood. It's not the little cracker and the little wine. In fact, it's a ceremony of unleavening, which means that the wafer has no yeast. It means that the grape juice has no yeast. And without yeast, you can't turn grape juice into wine. So to be so ignorant of what it really means to be a Christian, and how can you be a Christian when you say that I've never had the need to ask for forgiveness? Because Christ said that we're all sinners. And if any man say that he is without sin, he is a liar, and the truth is not in him.
Yeah. Amen. Amen. And it's it just points the finger at these people who voted for him, and apparently about 3 out of 4, or at least 2 out of 3, are still standing with him. Now, as for those who voted for him, but he's not quite up to their standards in political leadership, maybe there's some hope for them, but the people that, you know, hey, 30 million white men, so 20 million white men are still strong to them.
Yeah, but it's time that those people repent of their sin.
Yeah.
I listen to these people on the radio, and I won't say anything about what religion they are, but they call people to plant a seed by sending them money. Send them $1,000, and you'll benefit from it. Mm-hmm. And the one that really appalled me so much is the one that said that he planted $1,000 seed, and then next thing he know, the UPS truck was delivering to him a $30,000 check. And then when he told his mom, look what I got, and then she said, well, that's not the only one. And next thing you know, FedEx was showing up with a $30,000 check. And then he goes on to say that for that $1,000 seed that he planted, that he got so much money that he paid cash for his home. And I thought to myself, this religious man is stealing money that people are giving him in the name of Christ and buying Learjets and exotic cars and doing things with the money that shouldn't be done. But I've read God's word, and when Jesus spoke of the parable of the sower of the seed, there was no money involved. The seed is the word, and the word, when I tell another about the love of Christ, of what he's done in my life, I plant a seed. When someone else follows through on that and tell them what wonderful things that Christ has done in their life, which doesn't include receiving money to enrich them. But when that person is told about the wonderful things that Christ has done in their life, where the seed has already been planted, then that is the watering of the seed. And once the seed is planted by one, as the Bible says, one planted, another watereth it, but it is God that giveth the increase. So if you really want to plant a seed and you claim to be of Christ, when you hear this message, make sure that someone else hears the word of Christ. And the way I do it is I ask people, are you a Christian? And if they answer me that they are not, then I'll tell them the reasons for my faith in the word of Christ. And if they say that they are, I'll share something that I've learned in my studies, such as a parable. A parable that I'd like to share with you right now is the parable of Lazarus and the rich man. Everybody's who is a Christian that are fed on more than milk but have maybe graduated to the meat of the word. But if you're still stuck on the milk of the word, let me share this with you. Lazarus was a poor man, and he slept on the steps of the rich man, and he ate from the crumbs like the dogs. He ate from the crumbs that fell from the rich man's table. And it says that furthermore, the dogs licked his wounds. I don't understand that, except that all my life I was told that a dog's lick on a wound is like an anesthetic that helps to heal. So Lazarus died and was carried by the angels into Abraham's bosom. And the rich man, who lived finely, ate the best of foods and dressed in the finest of linens and slept in the finest of silks, died and was buried. And when he woke up in torment, looking across the gulf of Abraham, seeing Lazarus, the poor man that had slept on his steps, and called to Father Abraham and said, Father Abraham, would you send Lazarus over here that he might dip his finger in the water and quench my thirst, the water being the word? And Father Abraham answered him and said that no one can travel from that side of the gulf, which was torment, into the side which was in the bosom of Abraham, or that one could not travel from the bosom of Abraham until the side of torment. But he admonished him that in his lifetime he had the parables and proverbs that he should have learned. So the rich man at this point pleaded with Father Abraham, Father Abraham, would you send Lazarus back that he may warn my brothers, for I have 5, and they live their lives the same as I do. Now, if you've ever heard this parable, I'd like to bring your attention to the very last sentence of this parable that is told by Jesus. The last sentence in that parable says, though one should return from the dead, they would not believe him. This parable Jesus told was actually of himself. He told this parable and that he should die in the future and return from the dead, so that he knew then that the majority of the world would not believe him. Richard, what do you say about that?
Well, I'm glad there was some number who believed he did return from the dead when he did. It's always, the Jews say he didn't. His body was robbed. It's not believable to them that he returned from the dead. then you got a big punch, and the Jews stick with that.
Even though they had requested guards to guard over his grave,
Very
so
true.
that he couldn't,
And
the guards, and then they paid the guards off to disappear, so that their story couldn't be told.
Yeah, there must have been a payoff of the guards. That wouldn't have gone over too well with the centurion in charge. Why did you leave your post? You know. But then it was a favor to the Jews, so they might have just shrugged it off. Being a Christian, I believe that he was resurrecting from the dead, and it was the angel, and it was quite an event, and
Yes.
that the guards fled, and non-canonized literature. It's the company that included the executioners, the tomb guards of Christ, who were immediately under Pilate. They were the palace troop of Roman soldiers.
Yes.
They were among the 500 at Pentecost. And they saw Jesus on their march up from Jerusalem to where the day of Pentecost took place. And so they knew what he looked like. They executed him. They tortured him. He was under their guard for close to 12 hours. He left quite a memory. So they were among the first Christians in the Roman army, and I think that very much took place because that would explain Constantine.
Yes.
I think the seed would have had to have been planted that deep in the Roman army.
Well, that Constantine formed the Catholic Church.
Well, it was 3 centuries
300
later,
years
but there
after
always
Christ.
had to be a presence of Christians in the Roman army,
Exactly.
and I think they were the first ones.
But if we look back on Constantine, what Constantine realized is that this Christianity was not going away. And it was not going away, so therefore he decided that he would take the pagan religions that existed before the Christian religion, and he would fold them all in as Christians. And that's where you get the Catholic Church. Now, I don't celebrate Easter because it's called Easter, because it has the eggs, the rabbits, the fertility. Easter is a celebration of the goddess Ishtar. Ishtar was a temple where men went to have sex with women. It was a whorehouse. And so they took and turned resurrection into Easter, which was a recognition of the pagan religion of Ishtar. And then they took the religion of the sun god, which was the day that the day in the year in which the winter solstice was, when the longest night of the year and the day began to lengthen again, was the celebration of the sun god. And they turned around and made that the date that Christ was born. But if you'll remember, when Mary Magdalene came to the sepulchre where Christ had been buried on the day of Sunday morning, Resurrection Sunday, I call it, she presumed that the man that was standing there was the gardener, when in fact it was Christ. And she said to the man that she thought was the gardener, "Please, sir, tell me, where have you borne my master, that I may go and care for him?" I say this to you because you have to understand the word born, B-O-R-N-E. See, this is a word that is not familiar to us today. But to give you an example, maybe you send your mail out, airborne. It means to be carried. And so therefore she was asking, "Where have you carried my master, that I may go and tend to his body?" But Jesus identified himself and then admonished her not to touch him, for he had not yet ascended unto the Father. Now, I want to get back to the word born, because she wanted to know, where have you carried my master. And that brings us back to Christmas Day. You see, Christ was conceived. The angel of God came to Mary on the longest night of the year, which was the winter solstice. And she conceived, which we call Christmas today. It's when she conceived, and that is when she born Jesus and carried him in her womb for 40 weeks. And therefore, he was not born as the way we see the word born, as to travail the matrix on Christmas, but that's when he was born in her womb and carried for 40 weeks.
So he would have been born about this time.
September or October.
Yeah.
So this is when we shouldn't celebrate the birth of Christ in any form. It should not be done. That is not a godly thing. That is an earthly thing. That's kind of like pleasure. Go on, if you would like to relate it to sex.
Acknowledge it in terms that he was the fulfillment of the prophets. He was born of David on both sides, both on sides. Mary exactly. and Joseph. There's a lot of things to celebrate.
Yes.
And those first 2 years were very eventful.
Yes.
There's nothing... Yeah,
Before you think that you're better than another man, go and study the lineage of Jesus through Joseph. Because as you study the lineage and you look at the begats, who begat Jesus, you go back and it'll go to Ruth, Obed, and it'll go to Jacob.
Oh, yeah.
And how does it get to Jacob? It gets to Jacob through the son that was born to Timon. One of the twins that were born to Timon was...
Well, that was Ephraim and Manasseh.
No, those are born to Joseph.
Yeah.
We're talking about the children that were born to Judah. I'm sorry. The children that were born to Judah, not Jacob.
Oh, yeah.
Timon, remember Timon married one of Judah's sons, and he died having not given her seed. And so she went unto his brother who did not want her to have his child. And he withdrew himself and landed his seed on the ground. And for that, God took him also. And he had one other son that was young, and Timon said, what should I do? Wait for him? And then when he was grown, he was given another wife. So Timon, knowing that Judah was going to tend to his flocks and would be traveling through this certain town, she stood there and played the harlot. And he went into her, he propositioned her, and she said, what will you give me? And he had nothing at that time to give. So she said, give me your signet, your ring, your staff, and your bracelet, and then when you redeem them, then I'll give them back. But what happened was Judah sent one of his friends who went to the village and asked for the harlot. And the villagers said, there are no harlots here. And then when Timon started to show her pregnancy, the villagers brought her to Judah, that he should throw the first stone to stone her to death. And when she said to him, the father of my child is he whose signet, bracelet, and staff that I have. And at that point, he looked and saw that she had his bracelet, signet, and staff. And he knew. And at that point, he said that she had been more honorable than he. And she had two boys. She had twins. And one of them was Pharez. And if you'll study the lineage from Joseph back to David, you'll find that Pharez was the link to Judah. All you've got to do is read your Bible and look for the parables. Now, I know that there are people that are listening that may not believe on the word. But for those people, I will ask them, what is today? And they will have to answer me that today is September the 30th, 2017. Well, I would like to remind them that the date of the calendar is based upon the birth of Christ. What he did, if he had done what he did in today's world, everyone would fall down upon their knees and worship after him. But because it happened 2,000 plus years ago, it's so easy for those people to pretend that somehow it's just a myth. But I want to bring you and point you to what date. His life was so phenomenal that he was the Son of God. And that is why today you will tell me that it's September the 30th, 2017, because the whole world stopped and started over on the day that he was born. Help me.
Domini Deo, year of our Lord. That's what it means. And the West shifted that way for a lot of historic facts. Christ is a historic figure. Jesus Bar Joseph is a historic figure. And his birth time is as to who was ruling in Rome and who was ruling in Judea. And the time of his crucifixion, the same. It was referenced as to who was ruling where. And you can cross-check that. Historians have down through the years, and that's how we ended up with accurate years. Now, the 4 years, Jesus was born actually in 4 BC, but that was a clerical error that has long been explained that occurred around the 2nd century. And so that's a known clerical error.
And the other thing is that if you'll take the 40 weeks that he was born, carried by Mary from the winter solstice until count 40 weeks on your calendar, and you'll come to the last week of September or the first week of October. And to verify that, I'll have you understand that Mary and Joseph went unto Bethlehem, which was the home of the ancestry, to register there to be counted for the purposes of taxation. And in those days, taxation was done during the harvest season, because the harvest were the taxes.
Yeah, that's what was taxed. That make all the sense for it.
Exactly. Not Christmas that you call it.
Yeah, because the harvest would have long since been in.
Right.
Well, to me, it's not all that big of an issue. It is explained in church history, and I don't have that in front of me at the moment. But those decisions were made within Christendom. They were pretty well set by around 400, the year 400. And both in the East and the West. Now there were almost denominations existing. The Coptic Church in Egypt wasn't that close, and they had a lot of unity within themselves. But there were kind of outliers within the church. They weren't heretical. But then you also had heretical churches. You had Manichaeism. Although the heretics within Christianity, they kind of dwelt right there in the same churches.
Well, the seed was planted in the beginning. And when the servants of the Lord asked, when the Lord said, where did these seeds come from? For didn't I plant the finest of seeds? And they answered him and said, while you were gone, the evil one came in and planted the evil seed. Oh, yeah. Should we remove them? And the Father answered them and said, no, leave them until the end, and my angels will garner them and throw them into the fire. Now you have to understand, this is why there are evil people in the church that don't serve Christ. They pretend to, but the evil is in their heart. They may believe that they're Christians, but where we read John 3:16, it says that whosoever believeth on my Son shall not perish but have everlasting life. Unfortunately, too many people have clung to that, thinking that all I got to do is say that I believe on Jesus. But Jesus said, if you believe on me, you will do the things I say. So to say that you believe on him because you think that's going to save you without doing the good that he has called upon, there is no salvation. Now, the reason we're talking about this on a day that we're supposed to be talking about politics and daily news is because it's time for people who claim Christ but have hatred in their hearts for their fellow men to understand that Satan has overwhelmed the world to the point where this is the time of the end. And if it's not, you should fear that it is. These are scary times. Think about what should happen if we get into a nuclear war with North Korea. I actually believe that that's something that Vladimir Putin and the Russians are promoting. I believe that they're behind it, and the Chinese are with them, and that
I don't think that either of them want, a nuclear exchange. And Rex, and I like to spell his name W-R-E-C-K-S, Tillerson, and the skeletal remains of the State Department are doing a lot to prevent this.
It appears that they are.
Well,
but the truth,
are they telling, yes, yes, we know he's an idiot. He's not going to push the button. Don't worry about it. We got him under control right now. We know he had an outburst, but he just doesn't want you to be launching missiles.
Vladimir wants the ounce of blood that he paid for. And his plans, he's got 250,000 troops right now lined up on the border of the former USSR countries. His invasion of Crimea was a preempting of his invasion of all of those former countries. Now, if we were to fall into the thing, whatever it is, with North Korea, even without nuclear bombs, they're going to proliferate. And at that time, the plan is that China will make its move on Asia, Vladimir will make his move on all of Europe, and the Muslims, all of the nations will finally come together for the first time in their history and make their move on Israel. And America will be set in a position where it can only defend itself. While the World War III, which I believe has already started, but people don't recognize it because it hasn't proliferated yet. And at this time, we're going to stand alone. We're going to stand alone because we're not going to be able to come to the aid of the Europeans. We're not going to be able to come to the aid of Israel. We're not going to be able to come to the aid of our Asian allies. The world is going to be at war. And when they all finish, they're all going to be turning their guns on the United States. So we're being led like cattle into a corral, or like wild horses into a box canyon where there's no way out. Fear that and hope that I'm wrong.
Well, we can't even take care of Puerto Rico. How we're going to have a war and fight it effectively
on three fronts.
No, we're not. And then Trump then wants to cut how much revenue that could come into the government. You don't do that. That's crazy making.
It's absolutely crazy.
And so his tax plan, there's already conflict on it. It doesn't look like it's going to go anywhere. Well, but right now, his craziness, we're weak as kittens. And the world sees we're weak as kittens.
Right.
And I think that, relax, North Korea. We're really not a threat because this guy can't conduct things.
But he shouldn't be passing words back and forth with a horsefly when America is the horse and he's the fly.
Well, it's got to. If there was a responsible, the Democrats want to impeach him. The Republicans are.
They want him to sign things.
Yeah, but how do you explain this imbecile in the White House.
I explain it because it's the rule of Satan. Satan said to Jesus, he said, "This world is mine. It is given to me to do with what I choose." And I believe that he's found someone that will make that move. He made the promise that he will give the world to whom he choose if you'll bow down and worship after me. And he is not a Christian. He has no Christianship in his heart, none whatsoever. Greed is not a mark of intelligence. Greed is a mark of greed.
Yeah, he's strange. He's like a 10-year-old to a 17-year-old. And he never had to face any of the things of manhood. And he's a cretin in some ways, that he doesn't, he talks about, those guys taking a knee in the NFL, they should be fired. At the same time, 3 million people had the roofs tore off their houses in Puerto Rico. They're hurting. They might not be dying right now, but things, but they're in debt. Oh,
what does that have to do with anything?
Cancel the debt, Trump, and start taking them under the federal government wing to make them a prosperous, decent place to live. And it can start with this hurricane and the rebuilding efforts, because a lot of those places are built at decent elevation in Puerto Rico. They're not like right down on a waterfront, some rich acres on a waterfront. Some of them are low-lying, but for the most part, they build up on the hills, which is a lot more respectable than other parts of the United States, such as Florida and Texas, where they're insisting on, rebuild down in a flood zone. Well, they're not flood zones. They got knocked out by a Category 5 hurricane. So they're worthy of free rebuilds.
And the bayou that they have so much trouble with goes straight through downtown Houston. And they're concealing from us what the exact damage is to downtown Houston, but they won't have any problem getting the money that they need.
Oh, yeah, they'll rebuild down there, but they really should just raze it to the ground and restore it to agriculture. Because if it floods that bad, it's this time around, it's going to flood again. Forget it, Houston. You're going to have to move to higher ground.
Well, I have two sisters.
Over time, but you're going to have to make the move.
I have two sisters that live in Houston.
Uh-huh. Oh.
And neither one of them, God bless them, neither one of them flooded.
Oh, wise women, build on the high ground. Build on the rock of the Lord. Where are the rocks?
Christian.
The rocks are on the high ground. You don't build on the low ground. You do not do that. And that was a Jewish standard. If you have a plot of land, you build on the highest part of your land. Number one, it's the most defendable. Two, it's most likely to have the lowest soil quality.
The rock.
Yeah. 3, you got runoff problems. So that you're not going to, when it rains, it's going to run off. So build there.
Yes.
And Houston's just the opposite. They built where it's low. It's great for a terminal, but don't put the refineries there. The refineries can be built in any town USA. If you have a crude oil pipeline, you can have, and a railhead, you can have an oil refinery. So all these poor neighborhoods, you know what? Down in the greater Los Angeles area, there's a number of refineries that have closed down. And what it would require to put in new refineries, you strip away the old, you cut that up, you put it on railroad cars, you ship it away, and you bring in fresh steel, you build a new refinery.
Still not from China.
Not from China. You could... this could be a great benefactor for many states. And, don't worry, Republicans. You can put these in the older parts of towns where the people of color live And then, we know how you are about environmental protection. Yes, the poisons will be going on them, but at least they'll have jobs.
You know what? That's kind of funny that you should say that. If the Republicans really cared about the people who are losing their jobs to coal, hey, the government has given incentives to industry to locate in certain areas forever. So what's wrong with giving incentives to solar companies and the windmill companies to open up plants that are in the coal regions of this country?
Oh, yeah.
And then give them incentives to open the plants, just like they give incentives to companies like BMW to build in America, right?
Mm-hmm.
Give them incentives to build where they can employ those people that are transitioning from the coal and the fossil fuels over to renewable fuels. Now those people will be able to train and learn how to build solar panels, windmills, and the such as that, while the companies are getting tax benefits and deductions for hiring and retraining those people.
As far as I'm concerned, they shouldn't. We shouldn't have to bribe companies that way. That's a pretty sad.
Well, you could actually just ask them, could you relocate in areas where people that work in the energy industry are losing their jobs? Fossil fuel. That's the most ridiculous word I've ever heard. Do you honestly believe that dinosaurs died on the ground here and that somehow their bodies didn't run on blood, but it ran on oil, and somehow that oil seeped down through the earth so low that you got to drill to get to it? Give me a break.
They're swamps is where, you have plant life dying on a massive scale, not all at once, but just over time. 400 million years ago, North America, consisting of the United States and Canada, east of the Continental Divide, was located in the South Atlantic between Argentina and South Africa. It had a buffer of at least 1,000 miles around it from other continental land masses. It had prevailing westerly winds coming across it. The only mountains were the Appalachians in the east. So you had what are today the Great Plains and the plains of Indiana and Ohio and where the coal is located from Wyoming eastward into Pennsylvania. Well, all that area 400 million years ago were forests for about a good 50 to 75 million years. And that debris just kept piling up upon itself, and that's why we have coal beds. That's where coal came from. The oil came from embayments. Now, where is the life in the sea? The life is where the rivers meet the ocean. And that's why you have great oil reserves at the Persian Gulf. And in other parts of Arabia, it's where rivers met the sea. At the Niger, at the mouth of the Niger. Well, it's been that way for since Jurassic times. The Niger's been draining North Africa, and that's where the life is most abundant, and that's where oil reserves have been occurring. Now, natural gas are just older oil reserves, but basically from the same areas. Where we find dinosaurs at, usually the skeletons are not always, above a tar pit. Oh, wait a minute, yes. Oh, they were in tar pits, La Brea. So there's a relationship, but the dinosaur... sometimes he became oil, and usually he was just kind of out there in the sticks. He lost the fight, and it was just bones left, because they had other critters that came and cleaned to the bone.
Well,
Our
exactly.
ancestors, little rodents, you know. My grandpa's a rat, 200 million years ago, and that's who went in and cleaned up,
Hey, I would
nibbled
like
on the bones, those giant ribs like you see on Flintstones.
I'd like for someone to explain to me, how did Job know what a dinosaur and a fire-breathing dragon and a leviathan look like?
A leviathan is whales.
Ah,
Yeah,
but no,
yeah.
a leviathan is described as a scaly monster so big that you would drop down and die at the sight of it. Now, where did Job get these things from? How did Job describe a creature that is so big that its tail was like a cedar of Lebanon? That's like what we call a redwood tree.
Yeah.
The tail was like a redwood tree, and that it was so big that it trusted that it could drink up the Jordan River. Now,
Well, there were large animals that might have continued to exist
I'm
in
just
small
wondering,
clusters.
because I don't believe that Job was an archaeologist. He didn't go dig up some bones and put them together and come to these descriptions. And the Calderon, the fire-breathing dragon, where did he get that from? If he didn't see it,
There were animals that may well have died out by that time, or were in their last years at that time. That well, in our lifetimes, there have been a lot of species that have passed, unfortunately. But you go further back, there were other species that clung on. Oh, when there were dinosaurs living into the age of mammals. 15 million years into the age
Job
of mammals.
only lived about 7,000 or 8,000 years ago.
He did, and some of those, there, as I say, there might have been pockets of animals that were thought to have died out maybe 30,000, 40,000 years ago, but a few of them survived into those what we now see as ancient times.
Can I ask a question here about monkeys? If we evolved from apes, what happened to the apes?
Well, common ancestor. Common ancestor.
So we're not talking about evolution, because if we evolved from them, they would have evolved into us.
Yeah, yeah. No, it's just a common ancestor, and we came across one lineage and they another.
Yeah. Okay, now I have a question about the Big Bang.
14 billion years ago.
The Big Bang. Now, I'm trying to figure this out. Did the Earth, I'm not speaking of the other planets, I'm going to ask about the Earth. Was the Earth some big cube bigger than what it is today, and in the Big Bang it kind of sculptured itself into a
this is where we can have the good, deep theologic discussion. Did God speak and that was the bang?
Well,
or did God, clap his hands, spread his hands, or did the universe create itself?
So, but my confusion is that the Earth is this big ball, right?
Yeah, but the Earth came forth 10 billion years after the Big Bang.
But if they claim that it was came from the Big Bang theory,
yeah,
the third rock came from a bang. My confusion is did it come from a bigger rock and it carved itself into this circle in the bang, or did it bang and a whole bunch of chunks got together and just sucked up to some gravity that didn't exist, that sucked it all together and formed this round ball? Or did it hurtle through space and friction, like you would put a rock in a rock polisher? The friction, some kind of friction, made it a circular?
The universe came forth 14 billion years ago. And over the first 200,000 years, I'm just this thumbnail sketch, nothing could be measured. It was just filled with so much heat, radiation, gamma radiation. But gamma is a high energy, it's at a high frequency, it's at a high wavelength, it's occurring. And it goes through anything.
So I'm still confused.
Well, it took 200,000 years for the universe to cool into what man could measure.
So this
And
round
during
ball
the
that we call the Earth.
Oh, that's a long time a ways.
Okay.
Now, the universe is, quote, cooling. And
it's shrinking.
Hydrogen, well, no, it's
Expanding?
filling its whole void. It came, when it came forth, it filled out immediately. And now it's forming up in its cooling process hydrogen atoms, and first the subatomic particles, then hydrogen atoms. The hydrogen atoms start coming together and forming stars, and that their gravitation, pressure, heat team up, and finally subforms of nuclear fission, but then finally fusion are taking place in these hydrogen balls that were all over the universe. Some lasted, were larger than others, and some would have longer lives, some would have shorter lives, some would just fall apart. Others would nova. And when they're doing the fusion, it's hydrogen to helium, then helium to lithium. So they're fusioning up. Even right now, the sun is creating iron. It creates the first 26 elements. Oh, that's a big roach. Crawled underneath one of them big computer boxes.
Well, help me with one other thing.
Now, they're creating, some of those stars would only last 200 million years. Others might still be burning, but it's doubtful. They'd be in a white dwarf state by now. But they blow up. They have they supernova. The largest ones would supernova, and it's in the supernova state when there's implosions as well, and your rare earths are formed up, plus all the other elements coming forth, blowing out into the universe. And for the most part, when all these suns were appearing, it was starting to organize up into galaxies. But starting at about 4 billion years, by about 2 billion or even earlier, there were planetoids starting to form up. Our solar system started 5 billion years ago. The sun came to life about 4.5 billion years ago. There was enough debris that the Earth was pretty much formed up 4.5 billion years ago. But then at 3,800,000,000, it got hit by the P planet. The P planet was mostly gone in debris, but its remainder became the moon, and we've had this happy unison since then.
So tell me something. I'm really confused now, because I'm trying to figure out what created the gyroscopic slingshot of the 9 of the planets that rotate around the sun on a predictable pattern, and instead of just shooting off going somewhere. How is it that these planets have this course, this gyroscopic course?
Because you have gravity, you have in the universe this what has grown. It didn't even exist at the starting universe.
So this happens without a tether?
Energy.
No tether. They keep this pattern around the sun, this 24-hour circular motion, and this 360
gravity,
and this exact pattern without shooting off and going somewhere else. Huh?
Yeah, because the gravity of the sun plus universal pressure, which is dark matter.
You keep it up, I'm not going to believe in God anymore.
Oh, over the course of my lifetime, that's even the way God has done it. It's just even more marvelous because science. To me, the faith that it requires to be an atheist is far greater than to be a Christian or a Jew.
In my opinion, to believe in the Big Bang Theory is atheism.
Well,
okay?
I have no problem.
It's
an explanation of the facts.
Okay. One other thing I'd like you to explain to me. All these people who don't believe in God and believe in these things such as the Big Bang Theory and so on and so forth.
Well, it's God's method of creation.
I want to talk about Mars.
Uh-huh.
Earth is the third planet, right?
Yeah.
Mars is the fourth planet?
Yes.
Okay. Now, it's obvious that Mars has been destroyed by the radiation from the sun.
Yes, because it lacks a heavy iron and nickel core.
Okay.
Allow
me to move on.
Go ahead.
These dumb people who think that we can somehow go to Mars and create another planet. Hey, the effects of the sun have to pass the Earth to get to Mars.
Yeah.
So if the Earth is protected more so than Mars, why are we looking at Mars and trying to convince people that we could colonize Mars when in fact we need to take care of this Earth that we have right here, and we stand a better chance of existing for as long as opposed to thinking that somehow we're going to escape to Mars and we don't know what we're going to do there when we get there. Okay, let's figure out how can we make some water. Oh, there's brine.
Oh, boy.
Oh, there's some brine, so there had to be some water there. Okay, if there was, guess what? The sun has already passed the Earth in its heat and radiation and destroyed Mars. So, do we stay on the Earth, or do we try and make it to Mars?
Well, if you can make a go of it and it could sustain itself out there on Mars, great. But that doesn't mean abandon Earth.
No. And to even talk about, okay, let's plan to go to Mars because the Earth is not going to be here. Give me a break.
Oh,
we'd be better off building colonies in the ocean, floating countries in the ocean. We build a ship, and then we make it bigger, and then we make it bigger, and then we make it bigger, and in 1,000 years it'll be bigger than the city of New York.
Will there be a Trump Tower on it?
God knows, I hope not. Maybe if there is, the Leviathan will come up and snatch it in. And there won't be no Democrats there.
Oh, never.
Because already, they got ships and stuff. They got colonies that are already out in the ocean. Rich people have taken to building luxury floaters so they don't have to come to the ground.
Oh, boy.
They're doing that. Right? And so that's the beginning of what I'm saying right now. It's their way of getting away from the rest of us. No niggas. Oh. Richard Pryor said that when the Vietnamese were brought here, he said they had some new niggas. Well, this would be a case of no new niggas. Okay, anybody listening understand that I'm a black man from a town called Leesville, Louisiana.
Yeah.
And I've been called a nigga enough that it's okay for me to use the word in reference to Richard Pryor's statement.
Yep.
Running out of time.
No, we're just getting up at the closing in on the top of the. It is 9 p.m. You are webtuned to thevoiceofstockton.org, originating at the John Moriarty Studio, 231 West Bedford Road. We apologize for the Facebook and YouTube I've tried to refresh that. It didn't refresh. I guess could have rebooted, but we didn't go that route. I'll try it next time. Other than that, it's the audio seems to have been going out real good because the audition has picked up real fat waves. And it's been Troy and I'm Richard, and this has been our the recorded portion of the show, getting in on the Big Bang and rich people out at sea. You just stay out there. Oh, they're living on that $2 trillion of the that the corporations have hoarded, and that if we cut taxes, they'll magically return it here and spend it here.
Not going to happen.
I'll tell you, I think Republicans burn more rocks than crack whores ever dreamed of.
Really?
Oh,
There's
man,
gotta
they're
be something
just
wrong.
stupid on, oh, God, they can just, they can be real whack jobs.
Well, if they really want to jumpstart the economy, if you give a tax break to a billionaire, he's never going to see a dime of that money because he's going to invest it or put it somewhere else. It's not going to benefit anyone but himself.
Yeah.
But if you take and give a $15 minimum wage to people that are making $10 an hour,
Yep.
those people, come Friday, they'll spend that money, and by Monday, that money will have been spent on their family and on things that they can do for their family.
They'll finally be getting some clothes. They'll be going to the dentist. They'll
Exactly.
They'll
Maybe they'll buy a hoopty so that they don't have to ride the bus. But I heard a Republican this week saying that if you give $1,000 to someone, and then maybe they can remodel their kitchen. And I thought to myself, what kind of remodel can you do to a kitchen? But on the other hand, if you give $1,000 tax break to poor people that can't afford anything except for to barely survive, say they work for a major corporation and then have to receive government benefits such as housing aid or food aid or things like that, then maybe those people will be able to spend that money. They will have to spend that money because they can't put it in a savings account. They need a little bit more money so they can make it, and they're still going to be struggling. Still. And then on the healthcare thing, I hear them talk about a health savings account.
Oh, that's for like the upper third to the upper quarter.
I can't even save any money right now. How heck am I going to take some money and save for a health account? That doesn't make any sense. Yep. Let's get real.
Amen.
You give a minimum wage of $15 to the poorest among us, and by Monday morning, that money will be in the hand of business, in the hands of corporate entities, in the hands of McDonald's. It'll be in the hands of Mervyn's.
Oh, yeah.
It'll be in the hands of the dollar store, the 99-cent store, the such and such as that. Maybe if they're lucky, they'll even be able to go and buy a meal for their family and sit down. You know, people that make $10 an hour don't get to go out to restaurants.
No, they always brown bag.
Yeah.
Yep.
Maybe they'll
Kids
get
qualify for the free lunches at school, so no, they never see the inside of restaurants.
Oh, no.
It's a rare treat.
Unless they're washing the dishes, bussing the tables, or serving the people that are there. And then the way things are, the people that are serving the tables, in too many cases, they've got to work for tips.
Oh, yeah. I mean, you need that tip money. And some states where it's real bizarre, the waitresses can make, if the federal minimum wage didn't exist of $7.25, they'd be making like $3.10. And it's explained as, well, see, they get tips as well. Oh, gee, Mr. Republican, you're such a nice man. I'll tell you, the creepy cold.
Creepy greed.
Yeah, oh, yeah. Creepy greed. And
how much more do you need?
Yep.
Okay, I remember also going back to the Bible says, do not save and put up here on earth things that corrupt, where rust do corrupt and moth do eat away.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, oh yeah.
But build for thyself treasures in heaven. And these people claim God, but they're more interested in building their coffers where rust do corrupt and moth do eat away.
Amen.
Remember the parable of the rich man who said that I'm doing good. I'll build me storage where I can put up all of my goods and save them. And God said that, you fool, for today your soul will be required.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Well, folks, think about that, and the laborer is worthy of his wage, Mr. Businessman. It'll help you stay in business.
Because they'll spend their money with you. It may not be the people that you give the $15 to, but it may be someone else who now has a little extra money that they can come and buy your goods.
All right, all right. So that's for Saturday Evening News. This is Richard with Troy McCartney, and thank you for listening in. We are here Saturday evenings. Our phone number, you can call in 467-4455. Tomorrow we do have a great event going on. 11 a.m. to 6 p.m. is going to be the third annual Chicano Radio Reunion. It's going to be a car show, lots of good bands, DJs, food, drinks, beer, and good times at Oak Grove Regional Park up there at 8 Mile Road and I-5. So make it on up there. Bring some shekels to pay your way in, but it's a real good time. Bring the family and come and have a good time. We'll be back here next Saturday night, and in the meantime, keep listening to KXVS2B, the voice of Stockton.org. And we do have some sponsors. Let me share them with you. And patronize their businesses. And they are Hotel Furniture Liquidators over at 1648 North Shaw Road for furniture for your house. For books for home and business, the Miracle Mile Bookstore. And Doors Book Recyclery, those are at 2210 and 2310 Pacific Avenue. For your plastic needs and signage needs and printing needs, look no further than Custom Plastics and Signs at 326 East Dr. Martin Luther King Boulevard here in Stockton. And they got rods, tubes, sheet plastic. You can get stencils. You can get car graphics, T-shirts printed, business cards. And that's Christopher Cuevas at Custom Plastics and Signs. Sarfraz Khan will fix your computer. He's mobile. Give him a call, 922-1879. That's Millennium Computer Repair. For housewares, for electrical apparatus, for doors and windows, for HVAC, for tools, go to the Restore, Habitat for Humanity Restore. That's 43, no. Oh, man. Let's see. What is that old address? 4933 West Lane, up there 100 yards south of the March Lane here in Stockton. Tender Donuts, we bake fresh daily. They're up there 1304 East Hammer Lane. And for T-shirt printing, look no further than Leaders T-shirt printing, 500 East Lodi Avenue at Garfield in Lodi. And anything you want us to watch out there for, Dr. Troy?
I would like to thank you for having me, Richard, and I hope that I haven't offended anyone. I am not a racist, but if you are offended by anything that was said tonight, don't be mad at Richard. Be mad at me. And God bless you, and you have a wonderful day tomorrow.
All righty, Troy. And now this is Richard Slezak, and this is the recorded portion of the show. Listen in regularly. Thank you for listening in, and see you next Saturday here in the John Moriarty studio and the studio of your mind. All righty, we're continuing. That's not in a recorded portion, but thanks for being with us this Saturday evening. And do feel free to call in 467-4455. That is our station phone number. And call us if you have ideas. Call us if you want to be a sponsor. You
And
know,
if
you're
you have
running a
any,
business.
if you have any donations that you can send to aid for the people of Puerto Rico, please consider them.
Yeah, this might be a case of get directly in touch with the Puerto Rican government itself. You know, there's municipal governments there, there's school districts there, and send them the money direct. You know, what the heck? You know, you could do it to a government agency, or you could, you know, you might know of a church or a nonprofit right there in Puerto Rico.
If you consider yourself a Christian, plant a seed
Yeah.
to the people of Puerto Rico. Instead of giving $1,000 to someone that says that they use the money to pay cash for a home, if you have $1,000 to plant a seed, somehow get it to the people of Puerto Rico. God bless you.
Yeah, they need, oh man. Their needs are real basic, but we need to get them there as a country, you know. And a lot of it is, they might need, you know, they probably need 750,000 tents right off the bat. Family tent, you know, and then sets of clothes, you know. I mean, Salvation Army, I gave them a sack full of clothes today. But we can definitely clothe the needy. We can definitely clothe the naked here in America. We're pretty good about that. You know, people don't, you know, they might cast their clothes off, but somebody else picks up those clothes and, you know, gives them to where it can be done. Oh, my golly, I got a call. Take it, Troy. I'm not sure.
You know that in California we pay a lot of taxes,
Hey, good evening.
and we don't get a return on our taxes. States like West Virginia and smaller states that pay less in taxes actually receive the benefit of the California tax dollar. So we are a light upon the hill to many.
I ask people to call in, and they do, and then we're not answering it right. You know, sorry about that if you just called. Oops, because we do have we have a phone here in the studio, but it wasn't going on. So keep trying out there. Glad somebody did try. So again, our number here is in the 209-467-4455. You'd be on with Troy and Richard, chatting it up. Everything from the Big Bang to Trump.
To Puerto Rico.
To Puerto Rico, you know. I mean, what's come up about Trump this past week is that they were in cahoots. You had Paul Manafort talking regularly with the Russian general in Russian military intelligence, plus to an oligarch.
$17 million from that oligarch that he got.
Yeah.
And the guy's daughter is Vladimir Putin's goddaughter.
Yeah, yeah. And it's to me, and then, you know, Trump back in about May or so was talking with the Russians and said, you know, we should team up with you guys for internet security. I mean, and knowing what's become obvious now, which was suspected for a long time, but what is really amazing about what's coming out with the Mueller investigation is that this is continuing treason. It was treasonous in the campaign, and it's treasonous now. Trump saying about, oh yeah, let the Russians in on helping us out with internet security. That was a call of treason right there.
And then they want our voter registration information. Why? To make it easier for the Russians to attack us again?
Yeah, yeah.
Are you serious?
They're the enemies of democracy. You know, I mean, they're telling us. You know, Toto's pulled on the sheet, guarding, keeping us from seeing the wizard at the controls. And it's all being revealed, and it's like, man, why aren't these Republicans up in arms against Trump?
While they claim patriotism, but they're running right into the arms of America's enemies.
Yeah.
That's not patriotism.
It seems quite the reverse to me.
Wow.
It's treason written all over it. And these guys are going right along with it. At least 20 million white men started off as 30 million white men, the 30 million who voted for Trump, and just because they might be disappointed, Lord knows he didn't get the wall built or he didn't defund Obamacare.
But shouldn't they be appalled at his connection to Russia?
These guys are no, because that help Trump get power, and that's what they're about now, them getting power.
How about the one have a spine, vote for Stein?
Hey.
Wait a minute. Not one Republican vote went to Stein. Those were Democratic votes that were mad at the Democratic Party because Bernie Sanders was mad at the Democratic Party. Bernie Sanders is not a Democrat. Even now, while he's trying to take over our party, he still refuses to be recognized as a Democrat. It doesn't make any sense to me. But anyway, good evening.
All rightius. Okay, we got 9, looks to be 18. Here at the Voice of Stockton, we're going to go back. We're going to have some station IDs coming up right here for you. And
welcome to the afternoon entertainment hour at OJ's Juice Bar, and here's today's juice.
Listen to OJ's Juice Bar, Sundays at 4 p.m. on KXVS, The Voice of Stockton.
The Third City Podcast is a production of Third City Coalition. In our show, we examine case studies in urban development in Stockton and other cities like Stockton across the country, exploring their local and regional impacts. Individual efforts play a role in Third City development, and it starts with you.
take the boat train all the way to downtown. Sometimes a long way across the bay, but that's where you'll be waiting. In San Francisco, I'm yours and I'm coming home. So come and take me home. Come and take me home. Take me to the city, go and take me, and I'll be home. So come and take me home. Come and take me home. Take me to the lights, go and take me, and I'll be home. I've been around this place. Guess you couldn't say that I just needed space. And I'm sorry I left you, but I think I was meant to. I've traveled coast to coast, but nothing compares. Still in my heart, the city I love the most. And I'm coming home. So come and take me home. Come and take me home. Take me to the city, go and take me, and I'll be home. So come and take me home. Come and take me home. Take me to the hate, go and take me, and I'll be home. Just take me to the bridge, go and take me, and I'll be home. Just take me to the lights, go and take me, and I'll be home. Just take me to the bay, go and take me, and I'll be home.
You're listening to KXVS on 92.1, coming soon.
You're listening to the Voice of Stockton on KXVS.
Good morning, Stocktonians, and welcome to another episode of Tales and Tips. Your local veterinarian here, Dr. Julie Dameron, and today we're bringing it back to the animals. I have Patrice Davidson here with me of the Delta Humane Society, and we're going to talk about that amazing organization, which is a rescue, and the wonderful things that it's helping to do in Stockton. Welcome, Patrice. I'm glad to have you here today.
Well, thank you so much. I'm thrilled to be here with you, Julie.
Awesome. So can you tell us a little bit about the history of Delta Humane Society? How did it get started? How long has it been in existence? How long have you been there?
Well, first off, way back when, 51 years ago, there was no alternative in Stockton or San Joaquin County for someone who could no longer take care of their pet. They had to take it to animal control. And in those days, there wasn't many adoptions coming out of animal control. So a group of concerned citizens got together and decided that they needed to set up an animal shelter